You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one on one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical, tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1329. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice you absolutely love. We want to cover all those business things, all the marketing, all the things it takes to thrive in private practice, but we also want to cover all the clinical stuff that sometimes we don't remember from grad school, or thinking about how do we attract the kind of clients that we actually want to attract. We're doing a series where we're interviewing the speakers of our group practice conference, which is going to be here in Traverse City, Michigan, in May 4th and 5th, here in Northern Michigan, in my hometown. And I can't wait to have people come in. Last year, we had an amazing conference. We've shared a bunch of those recordings over the last few months. And now I'm going to be interviewing some of the speakers that are going to be speaking at that conference, just to get to know them, but then also to have you learn more about them. So if you want to get your ticket, those early bird tickets are on sale right now over at grouppracticeconference.com or practiceofthepractice.com/conference. Either one of those will go to the same spot. So super excited for that. This is a conference that's not like any other group practice conference. We have our main stage speakers have only 20 minutes. And so it's meant for you to get great information, but also to make those connections and have a ton of time to get to know other people. So our breakout sessions are going to be through an art gallery. It's going to be in a beautiful part of Northern Michigan. And we just can't wait to host you here in Traverse City. So I'm so excited to have Dr. Rebecca Resnik with me today. Rebecca is a licensed psychologist who specializes in neuropsychological assessments, and her group practice is located in Maryland. She's past president of the Maryland Psychological Association and board member of American Psychological Association's Division 12 Assessment Board. She also hosts the Cultivating Excellence podcast for parents and educators who are passionate about children's success and happiness. Rebecca, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thank you, Joe. It is such an honor.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to know you more and to hear more about your work. So first, let's start with your podcast. When did you start Cultivating Excellence? And tell me about that journey.
Well, I don't have 1,000+ episodes under my belt. I started the podcast as really a labor of love because I saw so many families who had been influenced by people out on the internet and, on Instagram and TikTok who were just giving really bad advice. And it's always been a mission of mine, just like you have this mission to get trustworthy information out there that people actually need and can use. I'm doing the same thing in a smaller way, trying to give parents the information that they need so that they can make really good decisions, especially given how stressful and complicated it is to raise kids in the mid-2020s.
Yeah, I have 11 and 14-year-old girls. So there's a lot of parenting advice I see that I'm like, oh my gosh. What's one thing that you see online that is maybe assumed to be true that you would say is bad parenting advice?
Okay. Well, get out your tomatoes, people, because you might not like this. But the idea that in order to get your child to do something, you have to convince them to do it. And the child has to want to do it and agree to do it and sort of go along with it. This idea that you're going to co-regulate your child through everything instead of having your proper role in the family as the authority figure who is protecting your child and even protecting your child from themselves, from their own worst instincts. I am seeing so many parents who misunderstand gentle parenting, and in their minds it becomes permissive parenting and boundaryless parenting, and the kids anxiety and emotions are wreaking havoc on the household, on the family, on the siblings, and it shouldn't be that way. And so, yeah, watching influencers who are giving just really bad parenting advice, it upsets me. It like literally upsets me,
Yeah.
because it doesn't need to be that way. There's lots of us out there who went to school and trained and are parents ourselves, and there's good advice out there, but parents don't know how to sort the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah. Well, I love that because I think that, this whole generation of parenting that they want to make sure their kids have it better than they did, but it's turned into it's so there's not often enough like stress. There's in regards to like doing chores and doing things when you feel like it's hard and like it just being what did I hear recently that it's often that parents are taking on the stress or the difficulty and the kids aren't then developing that muscle. And so I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah,
Um,
everything requires hard work. Everything requires friction and growth. And yeah, the parents, I think, now are under so much pressure because of work creep and because re- almost every family needs two incomes to survive. And our
yeah.
professional life has taken over. Our phones never leave us alone. We, even on vacations, we're answering email. And so parents have just very little time to spend with their kids. And so they're not even getting as much practice with parenting. But when you only see your kid for, maybe an hour a day, it's so understandable. You want that time to be as magical as possible and not a battle over whether or not, they've picked up their toys. So I mean, I get it as a working mom. I'm not going to blame the parents. But I want to be one of the people who's trying to help and not make money off of clickbait and ideas that appeal to people's sort of instincts and emotions. But we come from a science background, right? Clinicians are scientists. We're trained, and I want to give people advice that will actually work and not just get clicks.
Yeah. Now, I think I'm wondering, how did you get the confidence to start a podcast? Now, you were upset about what you were seeing in grad school. We never are taught anything about marketing, about, maybe now it is talked about more, hopefully. But I feel like, when I went through grad school and graduated in 2004, I had one class on nonprofit management. And it was like, it wasn't even a management business class. It was all about just like kind of the world of nonprofits. And we just had to interview some people. How did you get to the point where you were like, yeah, I want to start a podcast. I want to have my own influence against these negative things that I'm seeing out there?
Well, I grew up in a home with my father, who was a small businessman, and I watched his dental practice through good years and bad. I watched him as a business owner make
Mm,
decisions, and then my mother and brother, we have a lot of dyslexia in the family. And so both the issue of how do you run a business and how do you keep your family afloat, and being really passionate about individuals with disabilities and wanting to make the world a better place, that was something that was really baked in to my childhood. But as I got older and my kids started to grow up, and my practice is now at the point where I have this amazing leadership team who I'm so grateful to work with every day. We have wonderful office managers. It was like all of a sudden there was a point in my life, like this comes right around menopause, everybody, right? Where you can all of a sudden realize you have time to do the things you've sort of been dreaming of for a long time. And honestly, starting the podcast was selfish in a lot of ways because I get to talk with people like you, who I've been
mm,
fangirling forever. And it's so thrilling to have something new to do instead of the same old, same old. So you might think of this as like a fun hobby, but also kind of burnout protection as well.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like the podcast interviews are so applicable to my own life. And it's like today I have 5 interviews. And so it's like all these things that just collide in different ways. I was just interviewing someone. So at the time of this recording, it was like an hour ago, but the actual episode will have gone live last week. She was talking about the intersection of mental health and climate anxiety.
Mm.
And it's like my partner Claire is starting at University of Michigan social work program. She's switched careers out of climate science, out of conservancy and marketing work, for climate advocacy. And she's like, how do I mix these two? And then it's like I interview one of the world's top like educators, like over and over, these things just line up when it's like the thing in my personal life then intersects with my professional life. And I think you're right in that it can often feel like a hobby because it's so fulfilling to be able to have these conversations.
Yeah, I just love it. Talking to people, talking to really smart, interesting, accomplished people, like what's better than that?
Yeah. Well, I want to switch gears more into kind of your talk at the group practice conference, kind of what you're thinking through. And I know that, anytime I do a talk, it's like I have kind of the initial pitch that I gave to get the talk, but then it's like you're kind of mulling over, like, what am I considering? So tell me, what are you thinking about for your 20-minute talk? What are some of the topics that you're exploring right now? I know that it's not probably fully baked yet, but what are the things that you're thinking through for the group practice conference talk?
Yeah, I wish my talk sprang like Athena from Zeus's head, like fully formed and all in armor and ready to go. But the preparing is the really fun part for me because it allows me to have a great excuse to start reading and researching and thinking, and it's so invigorating. Um, you know, for my talk, I feel like I'm building a bit on what Melissa Schneider said in episode 1302. Shout out to her. That was a great talk. So she was talking about how to make a profit from an insurance-based practice, and it certainly can be done. But it's a lot about like, what do you want? So in designing the practice that's really going to work for you, make you happy, fill your cup instead of burn you out, there are lots of different ways to do it. And for a lot of people that I hire, they're coming to me from insurance-based situations. Like when I was young, I started out at a hospital and everything was all Medicaid and Medicare. But a lot of the younger clinicians that I see are hired as contractors, so they don't get any benefits. They're not paid very well. And they are working in very high volume practices where they are seeing exhausting caseloads. And, these are people who worked really hard. They care deeply. They have great values. They're super smart. And they spent all this time in school. And somehow here they go out into the professional world, and they're not even making enough to pay for their childcare or enough to, buy a car that doesn't leave you on the side of the road. And, I remember what it was like to try and live on $42,000 a year before taxes. It's not fun, especially when you've worked and gotten a master's degree and you're working your backside off. I really want to see people have the business knowledge and skills and sometimes even motivation and inspiration to create a business that will really make them happy. I mean, we're mental health people. We do a lot of good. It's okay to want to be financially secure and not, worried about your bills all the time. And we can do good by doing good. This is not about like wanting to buy a solid gold yacht or be like Wolf of Wall Street. This is about wanting to earn what we're worth. And in some ways, it's a social justice issue because this is a very feminized field that we're in, particularly social work. There's never been a lot of prestige attached to social work, which is so wrong because they do, like so much good for people's lives. And I want to see these things be valued. And if I can give people some business advice that I never got when I was young, I will feel really good about that.
Mm. Well, what's some of the business advice right now that you see that's been helpful in your practice?
So I have like 20 years under my belt of thinking about these things, and I learned, like I mentioned, from my father and mother, watching them run a family business. So one thing I learned watching my father is he went from having a private dental practice that was all fee for service, and then the time of the HMOs and dental coverage came in during the time when I was in high school and I worked in his office. I mean, it was really a family business. It was like go in on the weekends and weed or clean the toilets. It was that level of family business. And so I noticed how his business really fluctuated with the economy. Like sometimes we're great and other times, we were really stressed. I'm so sorry. I lost the thread of what your question was. I was going to get back to it.
It's all good.
Sorry, Joe. What was so the original question was, what was the business advice?
Yeah. I mean, what's been helpful for you in business? Yeah.
So the things that I learned from my father in terms of how to run a business, one thing that I really learned about was insurance. And I watched what insurance managed practice did. And so my father basically went from making a modest profit off of kind of everything he did to a business where they only made a tiny bit of profit off of just some procedures. Like if you got a crown or a partial or dentures, my father would make a little profit off of that. Everything else, he either lost money on or didn't make anything on. Mm. And in mental health, we are subject to whatever these insurance companies want to pay us. For a lot of us, we feel like we have to take insurance, that we don't have any other option. But we really do. If you think about all the things people pay for in this world that they don't expect to have covered by insurance, we have really useful people like plumbers and attorneys and, architects and people who come in to fix our houses when something breaks. None of these people take insurance. They're things that we expect to pay for, and they're valuable to us. When your toilet is clogged, the plumber is like Superman to you. He's the hero. And we are just as useful. And with insurance companies, constantly shortening our sessions, constantly restricting how we practice, this idea that we just sort of have to accept that because it's the right thing to do. It's not always the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do if it hurts your family. So in terms of business advice, thinking beyond letting an insurance company dictate to you the clinician, you the one with all the training who knows your patient, dictate to you, here's how you're going to run your practice, run your life, that's not good advice. So if we're thinking about what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to basically lay out a system of sort of decision points, inflection points that you can think about for yourself if you're deciding you really want to, break free. And my talk is called I Want to Break Free, which is a little homage to Freddie Mercury and Queen. But that whole idea of not being chained to the policies of an insurance company that, let's face it, insurance companies are about increasing their profits for shareholders. They like to tell us they're like there for us when bad times happen. But one of the biggest reasons people go bankrupt in this country is that they can't pay their medical bills. So let's think about alternatives to being part of a system that does not care about us, sees us as a commodity, a cog, and breaking free from that. You can do it, but you have to do it strategically. You can't just say like, oh, and yeah, I hate insurance. Insurance sucks. I'm just going to, have a fee for service practice. You have to do some pre-planning. And that's what I want to go through is that thought process and the decision trees around how you can make a business that feels good to you so that you can make a decent profit and also attract, keep, and pay really good clinicians who, again, will feed your cup instead of feeling like, these are just interchangeable parts in the insurance company's sort of master plan for how we get as many people in and out of treatment like as quickly as possible to protect our profit margins. Mm.
Do you want to expand your private pay caseload? Check out Thrizer. Thrizer helps clients better navigate their out-of-network benefits and takes the entire burden of insurance off of them. That means no more super bills, no more insurance calls, and the best part, no more long reimbursement waits. Chances are you're providing a super bill to your clients. Super bills can be extremely overwhelming and challenging for your clients to navigate, let alone needing to wait months for that reimbursement check. Thrizer provides automatic claim submissions, manages claims end-to-end, and the best part, allows clients to just pay a copay for your session, while Thriver covers the rest of your rate up front and waits for the reimbursement on your client's behalf. This is called Thrizer Pay and is already helping thousands of clients access therapy without needing to be out hundreds of dollars while waiting for reimbursement. It's the best way to make your services more accessible and increase your private pay caseload, hands down. Use the promo code POP for a free trial. That's POP, Practice of the Practice, POP. You'll receive waived credit card fees for your first $2,500 in charges.
Time to thrive with Thrizer. Head over to join.thrizer.com/Joe.
Again, that's
join.thrizer.com/Joe.
What would you say has been the hardest part of having a fee-for-service practice?
The hardest part is that you have to hustle. So the trade-off with insurance is that you get volume. In where I am, it's a very thick market. There's a lot of clinicians. There's all sorts of mental health resources, practices, hospitals, private schools that have clinicians on staff. There's no shortage. So differentiating yourself in the market space becomes really important. And that's one of the things that I'll go over is like finding your niche, branding, so that you offer something that they can't get from an insurance-based practice, which is a lot more time and potentially working with a clinician who has the right training, right set of expertise, who can really take the time with you. Oh, Joe, I feel like I screwed that up too. I'm sorry.
No, you're
like
doing
I wasn't
awesome.
nervous at the beginning, but now I'm getting more nervous. Like I'm really talking with Joe Sanak, and so it's messing with my head a little bit here.
Oh, you're doing awesome.
Oh, you're very sweet.
I'm wondering, you said attract and keep quality therapists. Now, I think one thing that new group practice owners struggle with is like, why would someone ever work for me if they're going to get, say, 40% or, a fixed rate of $50 to $60 per session or whatever their pay structure is. Why would someone ever do that when they could just go do their own thing and get that full rate? How do you answer that? And then how do you also attract and keep people?
Okay, so I'll take on the idea of how you attract good people. It's very hard when you're starting out because you are really asking people to put their financial livelihood in your hands, and they have to feel confident. They have to feel like you have a plan, that you've done your research. But success builds on success, and if you get some really talented people and invest in them. Back when I started, I had some business partners who really didn't want to invest in people, make them W-2 employees, give them a pension plan. And I really did, because what means the most to me is when I can, come to work and it'll be somebody who teaches me new things constantly and somebody that I've known for like 10 years. That's amazing. But it's really hard when you get started. And so the idea that, well, why would I work for someone else when I could just go out on my own? I mean, of course, there's lots of reasons for that. One is often underconfidence because when we get out there, we don't have any business training. And so we don't know what we don't know. I didn't go out on my own first. I wound up having business partners and then sort of figured out that we had very different values over time and that it wasn't a good fit. So we had a business divorce, which I don't recommend. But a lot of times you sort of start out and you learn the ropes as you go along. But the idea of why would you want to work for someone else when you could be a business owner is that a lot of being a business owner, especially in those first years, is it just plain sucks. It's very stressful, especially when someone else is really counting on you for their livelihood. And maybe they have like a baby at home and they need to pay for childcare. You sacrifice a lot of time, and you sacrifice, that time that you would spend on self-care. You sacrifice the time you spend with your spouse. You sacrifice the time you spend with your kids. I knew what it was going to be like because I'd seen my father do it, and I knew how hard it was going to be. But I really wanted to create a space where I felt good, but I also wanted to create a space where other clinicians could come and be treated with respect and make a decent living and hopefully really enjoy and love their jobs. Therapists they're such caring and passionate people that I wanted to create almost like a haven for people to come where, they wouldn't be treated with disrespect or just treated like, cash cows.
Mm-hmm. What do your front desk, what do they say when someone says, do you take my insurance?
We've had a lot of these conversations with them. And fortunately, Marcia and Lynn are fantastic. Both of them have experience working in private practices. And so they have taught me so much about how to run the business. They're always thinking about like, hey, could we be doing this better? And I appreciate that because I embrace the concept of service leadership where I want to work with people who are training me. So we've talked a lot about helping people understand that, yes, you're probably going to have to submit for reimbursement. And we do testing where it is almost impossible to predict if they're going to get $0 back or if they're going to get 80% of it covered. Or is there going to be a clawback later on? I mean, who knows? So we try to help them understand that that not taking insurance means that we are free to provide them highly personalized care with a clinician who has the expertise and the time and who will really build a relationship with them, instead of a clinician who's exhausted and on the verge of burnout because they're getting people in for like 45-minute sessions and maybe seeing like 10 people a day. That's not a sustainable model. And so I like the idea of slow medicine, where it's like the old fashioned, doctor who knew you your whole life. I want that kind of warmth and personalization in the practice. And so from the moment they call, that very first touch point, Marcia and Lynn do a wonderful job of welcoming them and letting them know that, this is a place where we are not beholden to the insurance company. We're going to do things the way that we feel is right and provide them with the very best care we possibly can. And if we don't think we're the right place, we do like Santa Claus in Miracle on 34th Street. When the little boy came in and he asked for a toy, and Santa Claus tells the mother, like, go to Gimbel's, don't go to Macy's. Macy's doesn't have it, go to Gimbel's. And the mother is like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. That idea of referring to your competition, we do that too. So if, we're not the best fit for them, we're not going to cram a square peg into a round hole. The value add is I have great relationships with a lot of other people who are technically my competition. But if I'm not going to knock it out of the park, I want to take care of that client and send them over to somebody who will do an amazing job. And then maybe they'll send me back a patient and we'll have, a 20-year cross-referral relationship.
We started talking about kind of things that people get wrong in the parenting world, and then kind of like your point of view. What do people get wrong when they're thinking about doing private pay? As an owner, when they're considering, do I take insurance? Do I not take insurance? What's an impression or a few impressions that you think people misunderstand about private pay?
I think a lot of people misunderstand the market space. So you really do have to take some time and look at your market and what niche you're going to occupy. But you also really have to understand if a fee-for-service practice is sustainable, or if an insurance-based practice is sustainable. Like Melissa talked about where she was and how she could pay her staff an amount per hour with insurance that really made sense for them. Well, I happen to practice in an area where the cost of living and the cost of doing business is really high. So I have a different set of math to do. And I think some people really don't sort of stop and do the math. And I get it, math. I didn't like math until statistics, but you have to think through things like your nut, if you will, like what you actually have to earn to turn a profit. You have to be willing to invest in your business. A lot of times I see folks on listservs who are like, hey, does anyone have a contract that they want to share? Or does anyone have a lease agreement, or, like professional documents that really need to be drawn up by a lawyer or a CPA? The thing about a private practice is you must be willing to invest in order to grow. So trying to do everything sort of by yourself, answering the phone by yourself, writing your own documents by yourself, or just like scraping them off, getting ChatGPT to write your HIPAA policy, for example. This is not smart. You have to be willing to really pay for good advice. And I've kissed a lot of frogs. I'm on my fourth accounting firm. The reason I'm on my fourth accounting firm, and they are god-awful expensive, but they are amazing, shout out to CBM, is that the accountants I had previously, they were much cheaper, but the mistakes that they made wound up costing me so much and creating frustration for my colleagues that you don't save money on trying to do everything yourself, and you really don't save money on going with like bargain basement advice, or just like being out on listservs and saying, hey, what do you guys think about blah, 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 blah. It may seem like, oh my gosh, but this attorney charges $500 an hour. Good. I want that attorney, and it's going to be worth it if I don't get audited or I don't get sued.
Yeah. Oh, such good advice. Rebecca, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
I would really want them to question the idea that being in mental health care means that it's unseemly to want to be financially secure. Again, we can do good by doing good. And lots of professionals are very comfortable charging what they're worth. Like I mentioned, attorneys don't bat an eye about charging what they're worth, because when you need an attorney, you really need an attorney, and you need a good attorney, and you're going to pay for the best one you can afford. The idea that we don't talk about money unless it's like patient fees. We don't talk about things like, how are you going to make enough that you can afford to have a second child? How, are you going to be able to live in a place that feels safe and secure, in a nice place? Can you keep your car from breaking down? And I drove a clunker that left me on the side of the road for many years. I don't want to go back to that. This idea that it's unseemly to think about business, it's unseemly to think about money, and that we should be like just self-sacrificing, that's not sustainable, because you can't keep doing that. If you're going to really be your best self and you're offer the best clinical care, you can't do that if you're constantly stressed and feeling like on the verge of burnout because you have to have such a high volume, or you're constantly dealing with insurance denials. I think we need to take back the narrative and see ourselves not just as clinicians who care, but also as people with marketable skills.
So awesome. If people want to follow your podcast, if they want to follow your work, where should we send them?
So they can find us at resnikpsychology.com, and Resnik is spelled many different ways. Mine is Resnik, so Resnik Psychology. The podcast is on all the podcast places you go, just like yours. So if you look up the next episode of Joe's podcast and you want to search for Cultivating Excellence, it's the Cultivating Excellence podcast with Dr. Rebecca Resnik, and that's anywhere you can find Joe, you can find me.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm so excited as I get to know more and more of the speakers for the Group Practice Conference. If you haven't got your ticket yet, the grouppracticeconference.com is where you can grab your ticket. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be like the TED of the group practice world. We have over 300 spots for you to come and to bring colleagues and to hang out. We have some amazing sponsors that are going to be a part of it, and we've got some amazing speakers. It has been absolutely incredible to see who applied this year to be speakers. So it's jam-packed with speakers, with discussions, and one of the best parts of it, to me, a practice conference, the parts I love the most are hanging out with people. And so we actually encourage people that if you're on break and you're having a great conversation with someone, keep that going. Skip the next session. You have my permission to just continue hanging out in the art gallery and have that conversation, because the learning, sure, that's great. We want our speakers to have a full house. But to me, those connections are the things that really last beyond just the education side. We are past the information age. We are in the implementation age. And it's those connections, those friendships that take you to that next level of your private practice. Also, we couldn't do this show without our sponsor. And actually today, we didn't even line this up on purpose. This is probably one of the best sponsors that we could have had for today's show. It's Thrizer. So Thrizer helps you expand your private pay caseload. They help you, your clients navigate out-of-network benefits, and takes the entire burden of insurance off of them. So if you're sick of super bills, insurance calls, all of that, you don't have to handle any of it when Thrizer takes over all of your private pay submissions. They'll work directly with your client. It's the best way to give more access while still getting the rate that you deserve. You can use promo code POTP for Practice of the Practice for a free trial. They'll also waive all credit card fees for the first $2,500 in charges. Now is the time to thrive in 2026. Join.thrizer.com/Joe. Again, that's join.thrizer. That's spelled THRIZER.com/Joe. Thank you for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.